Sit down. There's only two of us. Okay. Okay.
Is it okay for you?
Fine. Her waist is all the way down. Mother, I know. You don't need to tell me. How are you?
No, this is the second term. I had nobody in my family that divorced. Listen, you are.
I got tall.
That's good. I was like,
I always wanted to be tall.
I was here 2 years ago.
Well, unfortunately, we're all here.
Yeah, unfortunate. Yeah.
In many cases,
Jimmy Klein this morning went up there.
that name I know. Marion used to mention the name Janet.
Yes, they lived in the same apartment.
Then
They
they
got married. When they got
Well,
married.
then, I must have met her, I just, don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I didn't find anything to wear today. I know.
This is what you are.
Oh, they got something in there. I can see that.
I sat on it.
It always has something. It always has something.
Why would you not go?
Yeah.
How often do you
Why
sit
would I?
this close? You don't.
Yeah, yeah. Always with that laugh.
That was glorious. That was glorious. I just saw, I was like looking at Dorothy.
Oh, and her daughters
That's
are gorgeous.
Peggy.
Boy, no, well,
I
Peggy's
don't
the oldest
know
one.
her.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah, differently. But oh my God, Dorothy's mother was over her
I remember Dorothy's mother and father. I used to see them every Saturday.
Oh,
And they go to lunch and I'd be walking by. We always talked.
yeah.
Yes, I remember.
And I fixed them. My girl that you were talking to,
That's Elaine's daughter.
Yeah.
She works for Temple Emmanuel.
Yes.
And she's only been
still
there.
working?
Yeah.
Oh, she's still.
I've talked to her on the phone a few times.
I fixed up Elaine for San Francisco, Minnesota.
Okay.
When they got married, that was Jack.
That was a long time ago.
Lauren says to me,
That was our whole life ago.
oh, yeah.
And I knew she walked by me, and I'm thinking to myself, I know her. And it was like,
Yeah.
was there were two children. She had a brother.
Yes. Elaine had a son. Elaine had a son, and Joe was her husband. And the girls, everybody said the
Did she
same.
lose her son? Or is she Elaine?
Elaine's son is gone.
That's what I thought.
That's
what I
married to, yeah. Yeah, then he
Something happened. Yeah. He was gone.
cancer.
Yeah.
He died long.
I thought so. I just haven't thought about it.
So they're related to Sanford and it's a beautiful. Uncle Nicholas coming back.
Good afternoon. My name is Rob Nosenchuk. I'm one of the rabbis at Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple. Our deepest condolences to all of you who mourn today, to all of us in the community. Esa enai el heharim, Esa enai el heharim, Me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, Me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, Me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, Me'ayin yavo, yavo esri. I lift my eyes to the mountains. What shall be the source of my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God, do not let your foot give way, your protector not slumber. May God be your guardian, your protection at your right hand, the sun not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from harm, guard your soul in your going and in your coming, now and forever. Amen. Sage Ecclesiastes offers this wisdom. L'chol zman ve'ed l'chol chefetz tachat hashamayim, for everything there is a season, a time for each experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down, a time to sow, a time to build up, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to grieve, a time to dance, a time to throw stones, a time to gather them, a time to embrace, a time to pause from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak. And these are the times we gather to remember. El Harachaman, sweet God, you've taken a beloved one from us. Our friends grieve in a darkened world. For Dorothy's love that united us in life, death cannot sever. Her companionship shared along life's path, it continues now through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, these are now a precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. Dear friends, the well-regarded American essayist, short story writer, Joseph Epstein, once wrote the following: "We do not choose to be born. We do not choose our parents. We do not choose the historical epoch in which we are born or the country of our birth. We do not, most of us, choose to die, nor do we choose the time of death. But within all that realm of choicelessness, we do choose how to live. Courageously, or with cowardice, honorably or dishonorably, with purpose or in drift. We decide what is important, what is trivial, what to do and what to refuse, and no matter how indifferent the universe may be to our choices and decisions, they are ours to make. We decide. That's how our lives are formed. These words, it seem to me, naturally lead us to a shared sense of purpose today as we gather in this chapel to honor Dorothy Oshuns, whose determination, whose inner resilience as she faced losses and health challenges, whose outer toughness made her a force to be reckoned with. We remember her today. We pay tribute to her long life. We seek to flatten the fault lines and set aside the frailties of body and spirit that beset her. And today we concentrate as best we can on what Dorothy valued. One of the things I know she valued were traditions. I remember meeting her when we would come to the R.H. Myers building at the Menorah Park campus, Cantor Sager and I, to share second-day Rosh Hashanah Reform Jewish services. Although religious piety and synagogue observance were not her mode of Jewish practice, the opportunity to be in community, celebrate traditions, hear a shofar blow, see a Torah carried around the room, it simply lit Dorothy up with joy in a way that I remember years later. When Peggy and Lori, her devoted children, came to meet with me earlier this week, they were grateful for the many opportunities their mom had to kick aside what might have previously taken her, to hold on to traditions she valued, and to grab moments that she gained from these last couple of years, namely, the first of her great-grandchildren, Jonah. Her grandson David and his Debbie posted a picture to the Berkowitz website a couple of nights ago, showing Dorothy and Jonah's joy at first encountering one another. And you could see the joy exuding from her eyes. I know that the grandchildren, Sarah and her Connie, Frederique, Julian, Remy, and her fiancé Hatcher, feel a keen sense of loss today as their grandmother's death represents a time now to carry forward their favorite and most memorable stories of a pretty memorable grandmother and their grandpa Maury, too. We hope they'll each share with Jonah and any great-grandchildren to come, may they be blessed, with some of their grandparents' most salient values. And there are people who live a long life but do so wandering through it, unfocused and easily distracted. Not Dorothy Oshuns. She lived every day since August 7th of 1925, paying attention to the moment she was in and directing traffic. She had developed very clear ideas for what she stood for, what she wouldn't stand for. She liked things set up a certain way for a gathering or party. She liked to sleep in and counted on her husband to be the one up early with kids, for Dorothy was definitely more of the night owl. We are here in this place on her terms, and there is peace in knowing that when she died, it was in a peaceful manner in the care of the wonderful staff at the Vinny Hospice at Montefiore. Soon we will travel to lay her to rest by her beloved Maury and also near her parents at Zion Memorial Cemetery, because this is how she chose and planned it to be. It was her family's tradition. We remember her example, and we remember how she struggled but still tended to her husband when Parkinson's diminished his strength, and as she survived his death 18 years ago. I encourage us today and in the days forward to hold onto ourselves the way Dorothy would want us to, with an intense and committed and purposeful, forward-thinking energy. That's her legacy. Born here in Cleveland, Dorothy was the only child of Irving and Frida Mayhall. Irving served as a postal worker. He made a decent living, which was saying something during the Great Depression era. The attention she received as the only child has stood out from everyone in her family, who have all had siblings. She grew up in the Glenville area, and later during high school her family moved to an apartment here in Cleveland Heights, the corner of Mayfield and Coventry. Now, I did not grow up here, but it seems to me that having been part of both the Glenville and the Heights High communities in the late 30s and early 40s in Cleveland means that Dorothy knew every Jewish person in town. Indeed, up until a couple of years ago, Lori remembers that her mom would attend lunches with the women that she called the Glenville girls. Friends going back many eras who still fussed over one another and would gab up a storm, and often include Lori and other kids of Dorothy's friends at these fun, upbeat lunches. These women remembered Dorothy when she was just a kid, and they remembered the way that her life changed drastically after attending a party somewhere in the mid-40s, where she met a cute guy who caught her eye. Fresh home from his service as a radio operator in the Air Sea Rescue Division of the Army Air Force. Apparently, Maury had come to the party with a date who was also one of the Glenville girls. But by the end of the party, it was both Maury and Dorothy who were smitten with one another and became each other's one and only every day and at every party thereafter until his death in 2003. She was impressed by how incredibly smart and savvy he was, not to mention how dashing he looked in a uniform. She told Cantor Sager at the time of Maury's death that he was the sweetest man alive, explaining how much she loved his attention and willingness to do anything for her. And he as well grew from how outgoing and connecting was the Glenville girl that he married. Their lives blossomed in one another's care. After their wedding at Heights Temple in December of 1947 in the rabbi study, the two would honeymoon in New York City. They'd return here to Cleveland, where their home, largely at Dorothy's instance, became a central place for everything from family holidays to brownie troops, to entertaining couples, playing cards, to hosting gatherings for special birthdays for her daughters. Apparently, the birth of each of her kids drew even more extroversion from an already vivacious Dorothy. Lori remembers her mom making every party have a theme, and she remembers fondly her mom's free-spiritedness, spontaneity, things which Lori feels she hopes she has carried on into her life with gratitude to her mom. Peggy speaks fondly to me of her mom's creativity, including her affection for crafting, which carried her into her later years of life even when she grew more infirm. She also speaks of how her mom would stand up for family, especially if one of them were vulnerable or struggling with a major decision or being treated harshly. And I'm remembering exactly which of you said it, but both daughters agreed that Dorothy relished being a protective lioness to the persons that she cared for, and somewhat suspicious, at least initially, of the persons that her cubs would bring into their lives, before ultimately warming up. Lori and Peggy feel so good that each of their children have had the chance to develop strong connections with their grandparents, and they'll each speak of those memories and reflections in a few moments, things that will be forever remembered. I know that as I listened to their reflections with me, I couldn't help but think of how her life echoed the teachings in our tradition found in Psalm number 90, which states that the years of our lives are when we are blessed, 80 years, 10, or perhaps in Dorothy's case, 80 years, even more. But even the best of those years include trouble and sorrow. They pass by speedily, and we are in darkness. And so we are taught to count each day precious, each moment precious, to acquire a heart of wisdom. It seems to me that that was among the aspirations in Dorothy's life, to use her heart for wisdom, to direct her life's efforts and those of her friends and family and others, anyone who would listen to her, in a certain path that recognized sorrow and darkness were real, but not defining qualities of existence. She wanted the world to be prettier than that. She loved decorating the board outside of her door at Myers Apartments with festive decor for each holiday, secular or religious. It's true that traditions such as lighting Shabbat candles or making Jewish holidays were important to Dorothy, but so were secular and non-Jewish holidays, like Thanksgiving or Valentine's Day. She loved to wear and even make hats and add style and fun to a special outfit for any occasion. Being busily engaged in this creativity, but in a productive way, was something she learned early in Maury's career in the printing business when he went into it for himself. The two of them worked very hard alongside Maury's friend David Wolfson. The homes that she and Maury lived in, well, they had Maury's touch in terms of fixing the bones of the place, but Dorothy's aesthetic taste, her sense of what turned a house into a home, a place for family. The vacations they took as a family were driving vacations, often at long distances. so the four of them could adventure together. When Laurie and Peggy each had kids, the family would often go out on the weekends with all 5 grandchildren to lunch. When Maury retired, he began to help Dorothy, who had begun a while earlier an endeavor for which she was most certainly built, working and managing and hosting the gift shop at Montefiore. No doubt her ability to schmooze and kibitz helped sell some of those gifts, as did her ability to pay close attention to the choices shoppers were making. As I understand it, she wanted the best for her customers, as she did for all of us, so she wasn't shy about sharing her opinion with them, just as she was never shy about sharing opinions with her loved ones about the person they were dating, or the education they were choosing, or whether they were eating enough or eating too much. This assertiveness about her views definitely got her into some trouble. But come what may, Dorothy rarely, if ever, retracted from what she had said. She did learn, though, to open herself to what others believed. I know that over recent years, as setbacks ensued, she needed more caregivers and support, medical intervention. When I'd ask Peggy about how her mom was doing, she'd express confidence in her mom's capability if she decided to continue beating back those obstacles as long as life would allow her to. That trust in her mom's choices and convictions, that feeling of optimism, that perhaps in some hereafter, her soul is readying itself now to be with its soul mate. This leads me to say that surely each of us can learn from Dorothy's life. We can carry forward her spirit purposefully and continually. We can be proud of her knowing that even with our pride, she did not face up to all of life's challenges perfectly or show love and attention with absolute evenness. It seems to me she did try in her lifetime, though, to face the choices that confronted her honestly and with honor and intention. Yehi Zichram Baruch, may the memory of Dorothy Oshuns be what she wanted it to be. A blessing on her own terms, one that touches us every day of our lives ahead. Amen. In just a moment, Laurie and Peggy will each share some remembrances, but on her way to New York for her son's wedding, Cantor Sager sent me a message that she asked that I might read aloud about her memories of Dorothy. She writes, I vividly remember her with great delight and affection. She was a character, a bona fide, one-of-a-kind, authentic, unapologetic character. She was a spark plug, a firecracker. She sparkled, erupted in bursts of energy and vitality, flashes of wit and impudence. She was outgoing, effervescent, audacious, frequently sassy, and great fun. She could take teasing in the right spirit and would give it right back. She was entirely old-fashioned and traditional in her views of men and women. There was no question in her mind that men were superior and she needed to be with a man, and that the only way to attract a member of the opposite sex was to be attractive inside and out, to be judiciously solicitous, to exert feminine wiles, to keep one's love interest happy, whether boyfriend or husband. This is not to suggest she was a pushover, but it does help us to perceive that she was a complicated, complex human being, and sometimes maddeningly so. For all of her non-feminist ways, she was strong-willed and strong-minded, maintaining convictions about the world, some of which were outmoded and misguided. She liked to have things her way, and once she made up her mind, it was impossible to dissuade her. She was so stubborn. I will never forget how in her later years she refused to use a cane or a walker, even after being hospitalized more than once for falls that could have been easily avoided. She could be relentless in criticizing those who did not conform to her point of view, and could be supportive and encouraging of others. She loved to entertain, and even though she'd become anxious as her guests arrived, she liked nothing better than to have the family gathered around her table. In the early days when Peggy and Laurie were growing up, or during the wonderful years of having her grandchildren around her in Cleveland, she could cook for an army for all the holidays. She was a very proud grandmother. Cantor remembers how often she'd be at temple for any number of life cycle events, junior choir, religious school events, as David, Sarah, Frederique, Julian, and Remy all grew up at the temple. She could be very protective where her family was concerned. She was concerned, watchful, fearless, and protective. She could have done anything for them and loved to do everything with them. Her delight only increased when David found Debbie and Sarah married Connie. She adored beyond measure Jonah. Her greatest wish was for her family to stay connected with each other and be happy together. She continues, Dorothy always wanted to look beautiful and make sure her hair, nails, and dress were impeccable. She was a good card player and did so with friends. She loved music and was talented artistically. She knitted, needlepoint, made jewelry. She loved to party and being the life of it. She was equally at home in her volunteer work at a Jewish convalescent home in Warrensville Heights, and then when it closed, Montefiore. Again, she was a character, in her contradictions and Dorothyisms, some of which might include, and I'm sure these are precise quotes from Dorothy to Cantor Sager. Don't you want to put some sparkle on that? You'll never find a man, you're too smart. Former son-in-law Michael would say of her, she'd make a great leader of a small country. She was never a good driver and had to bribe someone to get out of taking the driver's test to renew her license. There was always a right way and a wrong way, and she knew the difference. She loved dancing with Maury. She was not subtle. She confounded and delighted us, exasperated and uplifted us. And even now we know that her sparkle, her vitality, her personality, her indomitable nature will remain very much alive in our minds and hearts. Wherever we think of her, whenever we speak of her, and whenever we add a bit of bling to our outfit and our outlook. Zichrona livracha, Cantor writes. May her memory be a blessing. I'm going to step down now so that Lori and Peggy can each successively speak here at the lectern. It's a custom here to use a wipe in between visitors to the pulpit, so just to keep that in mind for everybody's safety. Lord, come on.
Can I take this off? Oh, I didn't remember if you didn't.
I did.
Okay. Okay. Gotta start from the right side. Okay. What can I say? 96 years. It was a wonderful life, as they say in the movies. As always, my mom, I used to talk about her as the cat with 29 lives. So I can tell you that my mom was a special woman who wore her hats and coats of many colors, literally, and all that bling. So a true fashionista, always dressed to the nines. So she was the most devoted mother and grandmother, faithful to her family and traditions unconditionally. She always pushed you with a smile, a very happy smile all the time, and a kind word. Words that describe my mom are creative, fashionable, a great conversationalist, fun-loving, the party girl, and very creative and artsy. She also had some nicknames that came up through the years. And I remember her first when she was bowling, her bowling ball was turquoise and her nickname was Dot. So it went to Dottie, went to Dor, which my dad called her lovingly Scarlet. In R.H. Myers, there were women who called her Mamala. And finally, she earned the title of Queen Bee at Vinnie Hospice, where they dearly loved her. I will miss all our talks and definitely my daily visits and being creative and making all the artwork and jewelry that we did for many years. I will carry my mother in my heart forever.
Thank you, friends and family who came in person in spite of COVID. And for anybody who's watching on the streaming, we're really very happy that you are with us today. All of you brought so much joy to my mother. Before I speak, David wrote some thoughts and memories, as did Sarah. So I'm going to read David's first, and then I have just a few things to say. I miss Grandma. Oh, the other thing is I'm wearing this hat in her honor, and this is one of her craft things that she made for Valentine's Day. I miss Grandma. She was stubborn and feisty and a handful at times, but more importantly, she was also funny, caring, and incredibly generous to her friends and family. I'm so grateful Jonah got to meet her. I know how much she loved him and how happy she was to meet her great-grandson. She made a bracelet with his name on it. She held him when she was still strong enough. She was surprised when he grabbed onto her nose at 6 months and wouldn't let go. I'm thankful that she got to see him one last time in June when she could still open her eyes and talk. It was really sweet how Jonah let her borrow his stuffed raccoon. We used to joke about Grandma was like a cat. Before her passing, we had a number of scares over the last few years where we thought it would be the end. But once again, she bounced back many times and was able to see or hear about new family milestones. Not even a global pandemic could take her down. Grandma's superpower was her strength of will. She wasn't going to go out until she was absolutely ready to. I remember after I got my first full-time job as an engineer 15 years ago, she kept bugging me and asking me when I was going to pay for lunch, since I was a big shot engineer and had a new job. So the first time I was back in Cleveland, I made sure to pay for lunch. I remember how angry she got that I had secretly paid. Even after all the time, she kept wondering when I would pay. She really liked to take care of people, especially her family, and as much as she dished it out sometimes, at her core, she was incredibly loving and a generous person. We miss you and love you, Grandma Dorothy, and we hope you and Grandpa are reunited and are enjoying each other's company. You've had a few years of time apart, so hopefully it's fresh again like when you first met. And this is from Sarah. When I think of my Grandma Dorothy, I think of her vibrance and energy. My earliest memories of my grandmother are of her dress from head to toe, usually in something sparkly, with a full face of makeup on. She loved singing, dancing, and being the center of attention, and people gravitated to her as a result. She loved being the boss, and she was good at it too. Whether it was organizing family gatherings or curating the Montefiore gift shop, you could always count on her for an honest opinion and some direct, though not always desired, feedback. She also loved stirring the pot. If there was mischief to be made, you could be certain that she would find a way to do it. With a sly smile and a glint in her eye, she would ask you innocently, "Have you heard about so-and-so?" Even though you knew full well that she was just waiting for you to ask so she could spill whatever it was she knew. I have distinct memories of her interrogating my generation about our romantic dalliances at a Thanksgiving dinner table, causing many cheeks to burn brightly and parents to hush her. After moving to R.H. Meyer, she became the ringleader of a gang of geriatric yentas, self-proclaimed the Foxy Ladies, who got together daily to gossip and to critique the fashions of their male neighbors. And even when Lori cracked down on her diet because of her diabetes, she always found a way to sneak breadsticks and candy when Lori wasn't looking. My grandmother also loved nothing more than taking care of her family. She would gladly have given you the shirt off her back if it would make you happy, and this is no exaggeration. I had to be very wary of complimenting her outfits for fear that she would immediately give them to me. She delighted in spoiling her grandchildren and her great-grandson, Jonah. After I moved to California, each time I would visit, she would offer me anything I wanted from her apartment and refused to let me leave until I at least accepted a few drawings and handmade jewelry. This is how she was with everyone, generous and inclusive. She always made sure to care for her extended family and my grandfather's family, even after he had passed. She was also very stubborn and traditional in her beliefs. She was forced to confront a number of preconceived ideas when I came out as gay and married Connie. Even though I knew it was different for her, there was never a doubt in my mind that she would change because I knew how big her heart was and how much she loved me, and she did change. Grandma Dorothy was so full of life and energy that words don't do her justice. I think many of us believe that she would outlive us all. It is a testament to her tenacity that she made it almost 2 years into a global pandemic. While it's hard to imagine a world without her in it, and we will miss her terribly, I'm so grateful for the many years we had with her and that she now gets to be reunited with Grandpa Maury. To my grandma, I'm sorry that COVID took away the funeral and Shiva you would have wanted. But know that we will carry you with us always in our hearts, and we will be eating coconut bars in your honor. I love you, Grandma. I love my mother very deeply, and I know she loved me deeply as well. The only problem was she was as radiant as the sun, and I was quiet and sensitive as the moon. Because we were so different, our relationship was often challenging, yet we never gave up on each other. As a grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt, and great-aunt, she was extraordinary. No crisis was too big for her warm and generous heart, and no event was too small to celebrate with joy and pizzazz. My mother loved and excelled at needlepoint, knitting, and jewelry making. She had incredible taste. She also loved to shop. She loved Nordstrom, as well as the dollar store. She could get lost for days in the dollar store hunting for bargains. I am forever grateful to Stacy, who's sitting over there, my cousin, who took her out on outings there so I didn't have to. Thank you, Stacy. My children adored her. She was so helpful with my children when I became a single working parent. She helped us financially and with never-ending love and support, which was always accompanied by unsolicited advice. However, she never missed a dance recital, sports event, or school event involving her grandchildren. My mother was a Leo, and like I think David pointed out, her sign being the lion, and she was a lioness to both her maternal family and father's family, and my father's family as well. For my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, she planned a trip to Disney World and a cruise on the Big Red Boat for my family and Lori's family, instead of a party or a trip for just the two of them. Family was everything to her, family and volunteering. She began her volunteering career at the Jewish Convalescent Home and later at Montefiore. She was also a proud member of the Montefiore Auxiliary and won their coveted Volunteer of the Year award. My mother taught by example the importance of family, tzedakah, volunteerism, Judaism, and being compassionate and caring for people who were less fortunate. I don't think it's a surprise that I work as a public defender and volunteered at the former Ursuline Reiki Clinic and at the Gathering Place until COVID. She loved to be called Marmee after the mother in the book Little Women. So Marmee, I'm grateful for all that you taught me and your long, long life, which enabled us to grow, understand, and accept our differences and similarities. We never gave up on each other. I love you, Marmee. Dad is awaiting you with open arms, and Lois, Elaine, Toby, and Donna have a reserved seat for you at their mahjong table. Godspeed. Oh, okay. Thank you.
For those who are present here with us, reminder that our rituals will continue this afternoon after our conclusion of our service here at Berkowitz-Kumin at the Zion Memorial Cemetery. For those who are watching either live stream or at a later time, family invites your continued remembrances, your gestures of condolence, your loving thoughts in the days and weeks to come. They invite you to make contributions, if you wish, of tzedakah in Dorothy's memory to the Montefiore Auxiliary or the Vinnie Hospice and Palliative Care of Menorah Park at 27100 Cedar Road in Beechwood, Ohio. I ask you all present, and even those who are watching on live stream, to rise either in physical or in spirit for the El Male prayer. El Male Rachamim, Shachen Bamromim, חמצי מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, אם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת דבורה בת יצחק שהלכה לעולמה, בעל הרחמים יסתריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר, Amen. God full of compassion, eternal spirit in the universe, grant rest now in your sheltering presence to Dorothy Oshuns, who has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her find refuge forever in the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance, may she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. who abides in your house, who dwells in your mountain, those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth, who do not slander others, who are men of the shame.
The flowers go in her car. Girl with the flag. Okay?
You go to something?
Yeah.
They lived a long life. Peggy's gonna leave her car here. Is there someplace